Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your presence here today. I'll be walking through some of the work that we've been doing at Virginia Department of Energy on the modeling and forecasting front over the last 1 year. I'll be presenting a statewide energy system modeling using PLEXOS. We've started doing capacity expansion, resource adequacy, and transmission planning at Virginia Department of Energy. Today's presentation will be about on the capacity expansion modeling from 2026 to 2050. Some of these results are illustrative and are preliminary, and will provide walkthrough about how we are doing it and how we've started doing a capacity expansion modeling. And as many of you already know, Virginia is a data center capital of the world. We have around 35% of the hyperscalers are located in Virginia. And then every year, we are adding more than a gigawatt of data centers in Virginia. So, and around 25% of our consumption is just coming from data centers, and it's been predicted that in next 25 years, around 50 to 70% of our generation or consumption could just come from the data center. So, and to meet that demand, we also have a very diverse energy resources. We have coal plant on the west to largest offshore plant on the east. We have the largest pumped storage, and also at the same time, we also import most of our consumption from the PJM market. So it's very dynamic, both on the generation side and also on the load side. So as a state agency, it was imperative for us to understand how the supply side and also the generation or demand side evolve as there are a lot of policies that comes at a state level, regional level, and also at a federal level. So we've started this work starting last year. So before Virginia Department of Energy having the own modeling team and doing this analysis, a lot of the discussion were dependent upon the Dominion IRP, which is the biggest utility in our region, and then also on the PJM load forecast. But it doesn't provide a complete picture of Virginia. As a state agency, we want to understand how the energy landscape is changing in the IOU, in the co-op, and have a comprehensive understanding of what's happening in the state. So currently, around 66% of our Virginian customers are served by Dominion, 12% APCO, and 22% by electric co-ops and municipal utilities. So we started doing a statewide energy modeling and forecasting to make sure that we have a holistic planning framework. So as a state agency, a lot of our focus is on the policy. Our most direct stakeholders is the policymakers. We want to have them a data-driven insights for them to make any decisions. So our work is revolving around this different policy scenarios we evaluated. We have a base case where there is no any policy, where no VCA, no RPS, no EPA, or no RESI, built purely driven by economics and reliability. And then we have a VCA, which is a state policy. We have an EPA, which is a federal policy, and then a RESI, which is a regional policy. So starting 2027, Virginia is likely to be part of this, the RESI. So we have these different policies at a different level. So we need to understand, with so much demand coming from the data centers, with a growth rate almost around 6%, we're going to need to understand how the energy landscape will change when these policies come together. And then, as a state agency, we are few of the state agency that has in-house modeling capabilities. So we had to come up with a framework that works for us. We are not a regulatory body, and we don't have any assets to manage. So we gonna need to form a framework that will help our agency or any other state agency to have a data-driven insights on the modeling and the forecasting front. So we have a forecasting that we started doing with the ITRON tool, starting with the load, EV, data centers, energy, electricity prices, and then we have this, middle piece of energy modeling, We've been using PLEXOS for that. We've been doing capacity expansion, resource adequacy, and transmission planning, and trying to find a way that it all interacts together and provide a more data-driven insights. And then all goes to our in-house, we're customizing the energy innovation tool, energy policy simulator, to understand the other parameters like jobs, GDP impact, carbon pricing, investment, and all sort of things, and that helps inform our energy plan that's coming, this year, sometime in October, November, and then help simulate some of the bills that comes in General Assembly, produce a statewide annual modeling and forecasting report, and evaluate innovative technologies. So I'll share some of the key inputs and results. Like I said, these are preliminary, and this was our initial run, so a lot of things have changed now, but just want to give pictures of what different metrics or what different parameters we are interested in. So for this case, this is just a 3% CAGR. We've just started our initial run with 3% CAGR and then net peak, with the demand side management. A lot of our initial runs were based on the Dominion IRP. A lot of the assumptions, a lot of the inputs were based on that. But eventually, we're trying to change a little bit so that we get a complete picture of Virginia and not just a DOM zone. And similarly, with some assumption on the consumption, assumption on the inputs on the fuel prices. These are again from the Dominion IRP, and some assumption on the RESI. These are very preliminary, we just estimated it for now because we don't know how much the carve out going to be for Virginia, and some estimation on the clearing price. These all are inputs that we put into our model. And then we have some assumption on the ELCC as well. We are currently relying on the BRA rating from the PJM, but we are trying to have a feedback between capacity expansion and resource adequacy so that the model calculates itself. But for now, we are inputting our data as an ELCC value. For example, we have certain ELCC for first 3 gigawatt, and then we have reduction in the ELCC value for different variable energy resources. And then we also had to do some assumption on how the market would interact, since we are doing a statewide forecasting, right? And a lot of this, electricity systems are not state specific. It's in the multi-state. So we have to find a way. We have to carve out Virginia from the PJM and have an understanding of how we could have an understanding of what's happening in Virginia and how one policy would impact, to Virginian. And then we came up with these 3 markets: Maryland, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and then have some transfer capabilities based on this NERC ICTS study, and have some cap on how much we can import. We have assumed 40% of the peak load can be, we can buy from the PJM market and then reduce to 20% based on, assumption like, after 10 years there could be less resources available in the PJM, and then it could be expensive. So these are some of the assumptions that we came up. So now some of the results, and like I said, these are preliminary, illustrative, and just for a illustration purpose. So we are interested in seeing how the generation mix on the different policy scenarios look like under VCEA, which is the Virginia Clean Energy Economy Act. How we are seeing some of the certain resources getting built out because of the compliance of the resources. And like I said, this is a statewide, not just one utilities. So we have to carve out like what utilities is being compliant with this VCEA. Some utilities are not compliant, some co-ops, all co-ops are not compliant, so we have to come up with that modeling. Similarly, when we have this VCEA and RESI, how the generation mix look like. And this is very imperative for state agency to inform the policymakers, because they are interested in understanding what is the impact of a certain policies, certain bills, and this will help us understand how this situation will look like with these policies in place. Similarly with the EPA, these are similar slides, but with the different policy metrics together. And then what are the different new versus existing generation mix, and then some of the analysis like system cost, which is like all the capital, fixed O&M, fuel, carbon, imports, and all that. So these kind of analysis will help evaluate like how different policies add to a system cost, And we're doing it for 25 years. Like I said, these are initial numbers, and a lot of things have changed now. So just bear that in mind. And also looking into the fuel costs, where as a state, how much cost would anticipate in the natural gas versus coal, uranium. So this will help policymakers to understand, like in next 20, 25 years, this is the cost that could be for different fuel types. Similarly, how much BCF of natural gas could be consumed in different policies. So this will help in understanding or planning for the natural gas build-out plan and inform the, how the impact of the consumption in the, fuel with the different policies. Similarly, how much coal would need it, So this is just an illustrative case, but you can see there's such a difference in the consumption under different policies. So, the impact of the policy is huge. And similarly, how much uranium would be consumed, and capacity build plan, under different scenarios. This is just an example for VCA, EPA, RESI, when different units has to be built. This is like a typical capacity expansion modeling. I think everyone in this room is well aware of this, but just want to give an idea or a perspective that as a state agency, we've also started doing this. We used to rely a lot on the consultant on this work, but there was a gap on the modeling and the policy. A lot of the policies are coming into effect without much of modeling or data-driven kind of approach. So we have started to do that in-house and provide that information to our policymakers, which can actually impact the energy landscape. And we started this, but there are a lot of states who are trying to implement this framework, this set of tools, set of data, and set of ecosystem that can help provide the policymakers better understanding of impact of the policies. And similarly, how much battery you should build, and this is, again, initial preliminary numbers, so we can help understand what are the different units or different kind of resources that will be coming online. And then other is like a different CO2 production or different policy scenarios, how the policy could, different policy could have a different, CO2 productions, and also in the carbon intensity and emission cost under different RESI, how much for a utility, how much it would cost based on the carve out. So this will help, and we've been interacting with the policymakers, and they are very receptive to this. And they're providing suggestions, and so that they can be more informed whenever there is a new bill that could come. So we've been having a lot of interaction. So there was a gap, like I said, with the policy makers and the modeling. Modeling was done mostly by the research institute and by the consultant. Policymakers was mostly driven mostly by the politics, I would say. But now things have started changing in Virginia. Starting last year. And then we have different sensitivities, how DSM could save in total system cost, how load growth could impact a total system cost. These are all our sensitivities, and this is based on the fuel prices. And again, we are relying a lot on our utility numbers, and then different bill cost, how our bill cost would change. So yeah, I think that was my last slide, but I just want to reiterate a little bit that last week I was at a National Council on Electricity Policy. I shared some of this work, and they're really interested in doing this in-house. A lot of states want to use these tools like PLEXOS and do their own modeling, do their own forecasting, so that they understand things better. A lot of time there has been biases, one or the other based on like whoever is at the administration, but having that independent understanding of what's happening and how the policy could impact is very imperative. So glad to use this tool, and have been a very good support from all the stakeholders. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, so happy to answer any question. Thank you.
Hi, I was I might not have been able to see it from back here, but I was curious. I think you have hydro listed as a possible increasing resource for Virginia. Is that true, or was I misreading that?
No, I think I don't have. Let me see if I can go to the slide. And like I said, these are
one of the first slides, and I just couldn't tell between the green and the blue what was what. If it was natural gas, hydro, or
I think the
wind.
blue. If you are talking about blue, I think it was nuclear.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
But nuclear was in a different color later in later slides. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It would be earlier on.
Yeah, somewhere there, I guess, right?
This one? See where it says hydro in blue? Coal yellow, hydro blue, natural gas green. Up at the top, the key.
Yeah,
I
think this one, I think we've probably factored in our pumped storage here, but I need to see. Like I said, this is our very initial results.
Yeah,
I was just curious. This has changed a lot, so yeah, in the updated slides, updated results, I think that will not be,
feasible.
If there is any discrepancy, that will be, taken care of.
But it is hydro. That blue is hydro.
Yes. This
yes.
One. Yeah.
So there would have to be a lot of hydro build to achieve that if you were to try to achieve this particular outcome. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any more questions? All right, I guess you have. Yeah. So we are, in our modeling, we are looking into the Dominion IRP, what's their plan in the build out. We're also looking in the RPS filing that the other utility does. And we're we're talking with different cooperatives about their plan, about the build out. And then whatever the model is giving a results, like what different build out is economical, we're trying to match with what the utility or co-op plan is, and then make sure that if there is some unrealistic expansion plan shown by the model, we try to make sure that it aligns with the stakeholders' understanding and plan.
Hi. I was looking at a couple of the expansion plans or the gen mixes that you guys had, and they didn't seem to have batteries in them. And I know batteries are a big thing right now in Virginia. I know you guys are still looking at that, trying to think about it and what that expansion might look like coming up in your report later this year.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Yeah, so in that slide, I think there was no any battery expansion plan, but there has been a recent bill that passed, so which mandate, I think, around 20 gigawatt of battery storage in the next 20 years. So yeah, when we are doing our energy plan, we will be factoring in that as an constraint, like you have to build this much. So we'll definitely have a battery expansion and in a detail, and we're hoping to do that modeling for our energy plan. So yeah, we'll be doing that. But thank you for the question. I can see one.
Thank you. Hi. I had a question on your comment on why your state agency decided to start doing the work inside. Is it mainly to internalize this knowledge and be able to explain a little bit more clearly to stakeholders? Is it the disconnection maybe with consultants to the actual policy? Just wanted to emphasize or understand better your decision.
Yeah. So I think for Virginia, it was a necessity. Like we have so much load growth, we have such a diverse energy resources, so many different electric service providers, and reaching out or having a help from the consultant or a research lab. It was a lot of frequent requests from the policymakers as well. So we find it economical to have our own team and start doing the modeling. and build a better relationship with the utilities and co-op so that we have a good channel of data sharing and all that. So we'll be in line with that. So I think it was a necessity for energy offices like ours, but we have seen that other energy offices have started implementing or utilizing to build their in-house team, so they can inform their policymakers better. But I've seen a trend over the last 1 year is that a lot of policymakers are now interested in these tools and want to understand what's happening, and they have started asking the right questions. Initially, when I started and showed some results, there was some questions all over the place, but now I think policymakers are also aligned with what the tools can provide and what it can. So I think there has been a shift in that approach. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.